You don't yawn because you're tired. You don't yawn because you need oxygen. Everything you've been told is wrong. In 2007, a researcher at Binghamton University put people in a room and made them watch videos, boring videos, the kind that should make anyone yawn. But here's the thing. Half the room had ice packs strapped to their foreheads. The other half had warm compresses. The people with ice packs, they barely yawned. The people with warm compresses, they yawned constantly. Temperature, not boredom, not oxygen, temperature. Your brain is 3 pounds of fat and protein that generates about 20 watts of power. That's the same as a dim light bulb. And just like a light bulb, it gets hot when it works. When you're tired, when you're bored, when you've been awake too long, your brain temperature rises. Not by much, maybe half a degree Celsius. But that's enough, and your body has a problem. Your brain can't afford to overheat. Neurons start misfiring at just a few degrees above normal. You get confused. You make mistakes. In extreme cases, you hallucinate. So your body has a cooling system, sweating, breathing, and yawning. When you yawn, you're not gulping air because you need more oxygen. You're pulling in a rush of cool air that flows past the sinus cavities in your skull. Those cavities sit right next to major blood vessels feeding your brain. The cool air chills the blood. The chilled blood flows into your brain cools down. It's a radiator, but here's where it gets strange. If yawning is just about cooling your brain, why does it spread? Why do you yawn when someone else yawns? Why do you yawn when you read the word yawn? Why are you fighting the urge to yawn right now? In 2010, scientists at the University of Pisa tested this. They showed people videos of other people yawning. Then they measured how long it took for the viewers to yawn. The closer the relationship between the viewer and the person on screen, the faster the yawn spread. Strangers, slow. Friends, faster. Family, almost instant. Contagious yawning isn't about temperature. It's about empathy. When you see someone yawn, a specific part of your brain lights up. The posterior cingulate cortex, that's the same region that activates when you try to understand what someone else is feeling. When you imagine yourself in their shoes. When you connect, dogs do this too. Show a dog a video of another dog yawning and it yawns, but only if it's a dog the animal knows. Wolves don't do it with strangers. Chimpanzees do it with their troop. Humans do it with anyone we feel even a shred of connection to. You yawn because your brain is overheating, but you yawn with others because you're wired to feel what they feel. Now think about what that means. Empathy isn't a choice, it's automatic. You can't stop contagious yawning any more than you can stop your pupils from dilating in the dark. Researchers have tried. They've asked people to resist, to focus, to think about something else. It doesn't work. If you're watching someone yawn and you have a functioning posterior cingulate cortex, you yawn, period, unless you're a psychopath. In 2015, a team at Baylor University tested 135 college students. They measured their psychopathic traits using a standard psychological assessment. Then they showed them videos of people yawning. The students with higher psychopathic scores, especially those lacking empathy and emotional connection, yawned significantly less. They weren't immune, they just didn't care. The rest of us, we're stuck with it. And that's not a bug, that's the whole point. Contagious yawning probably evolved as a way to synchronize group behavior. Imagine you're an early human, 200,000 years ago, sitting around a fire with your tribe. Someone yawns, their brain is overheating, they're getting tired, you yawn. Your brain starts cooling down too. Within minutes, the whole group is yawning. Everyone's brain temperature drops together, everyone gets sleepy at the same time. That matters. Because if half the group falls asleep while the other half is wide awake, you're vulnerable. Predators hunt at transitions, dawn. dusk. The moments when some animals are waking up and others are going to sleep. A group that synchronizes its sleep cycle survives longer. So yawning became social. But it didn't stop there. In 2008, researchers discovered something nobody expected. Fetuses yawn inside the womb at around 20 weeks, long before they've ever seen another human being, long before they could possibly be bored or tired in any meaningful way. They're not cooling their brains. The amniotic fluid is already the perfect temperature. They're practicing the same way a fetus practices breathing. Even though there's no air, it practices yawning, even though there's no one to yawn with. Because when that baby is born, it's going to need to connect. It's going to need to sync with its mother, with its family, with the people who keep it alive. Yawning is rehearsal for empathy. But most people never think about this. They yawn and move on. They see someone yawn and they yawn back, and they don't stop to ask why. And that's fine. You don't need to understand a reflex to use it. But once you do understand it, you start seeing it everywhere. Here's something you've probably never noticed. You yawn more in winter. Not because you're more tired, not because you're bored, because your brain runs hotter when the air outside is cold. Your body works harder to maintain its core temperature, and that extra work generates extra heat. Your brain heats up. You yawn more. In 2011, scientists tested this in Arizona. They showed the same yawning videos to people in two conditions: when it was 72 degrees Fahrenheit outside and when it was 100 degrees. In the cooler weather, people yawned way more. When it was hot outside, their brains were already struggling to cool down. Adding a yawn didn't help, so the reflex weakened. Your body is smarter than you think. It knows when cooling will work and when it won't. In extreme heat, yawning is useless, so your brain just stops triggering it as much. The same reflex that feels automatic and unstoppable can be quietly dialed down when the environment makes it pointless. And that's not the only thing your brain adjusts. You yawn less when you're being watched. In 2014, a study tracked people in public versus private settings. Alone in a room, frequent yawning. In a crowded subway, almost none, even when people were tired, even when their brains were overheating. The social cost of yawning, the perception that it signals boredom or disrespect, was enough to suppress the reflex. You're not conscious of this. Nobody decides, I won't yawn because people are watching. It just happens. Your brain weighs the cooling benefit against the social risk and makes the call for you, which means yawning isn't just a reflex, it's a negotiation between your body's need to cool down and your social need to fit in, between your biology and your culture. And in that negotiation, culture often wins. But here's the part that changes everything. Not everyone yawns the same way. People with autism spectrum disorder yawn less in response to others. Not because they don't feel empathy, but because their brains process social cues differently. The same video that makes a neurotypical person yawn within seconds might not trigger anything in someone on the spectrum. And for decades, researchers misunderstood this. They thought it meant people with autism couldn't connect. They were wrong. In 2013, a more careful study showed that people with autism yawn just as much when they're alone. Their brains overheat, they cool down. The reflex works perfectly. What's different is the social trigger, the automatic mirroring. The thing that happens without thought in most people takes conscious effort for them. And that tells us something important. Empathy isn't one thing. It's a collection of processes, some automatic, some learned, some biological, some cultural. And yawning sits right at the intersection. When you yawn because someone else yawned, you're not thinking about empathy. You're not trying to connect. It just happens. And that's the point. Most of our emotional lives work this way. We feel what others feel before we have time to think about it. But we never notice until someone points it out. There's a man in France who hasn't yawned in 23 years. Not once. In 1997, he had a stroke, a small one, barely noticeable at first, but it damaged a tiny region deep in his brain called the hypothalamus. That's the part that regulates body temperature, hunger, thirst, and a dozen other automatic functions you never think about. After the stroke, his body stopped yawning. He could still open his mouth wide, he could still breathe deeply, but the reflex itself was gone. His brain would overheat and nothing would happen. No cooling mechanism, no relief. Doctors tested him, they showed him videos of people yawning, they put him in warm rooms, they kept him awake for 36 hours straight, nothing. His brain had lost the ability to trigger the response. And here's the strange part, he didn't miss it. When researchers asked him how he felt, he said he didn't notice anything different. He got tired, he got hot. But without the yawn reflex, he never realized something was missing. Because you don't feel the absence of a reflex, you only feel it when it's there. Which makes you wonder how many other reflexes are running in the background right now, keeping you alive, and you have no idea. Your heart rate adjusts when you stand up, your pupils dilate in the dark, your body shivers when you're cold. You don't choose any of this. It just happens. And yawning is the same. It's invisible until someone takes it away. But most people will never lose the reflex. Most people will yawn 250,000 times in their lives. That's about 9 yawns a day, every day, from birth to death. Some days more, some days less, but the average holds, and every single one of those yawns is doing 2 things at once: cooling your brain and connecting you to the people around you. You just never think about it. In 2016, a researcher at the University of Maryland did something unusual. He went to shopping malls and coffee shops and just watched people. He counted yawns. He tracked who yawned first and who yawned in response. And he found something no lab experiment had ever shown. Contagious yawning works across species. A woman yawned while walking her dog. The dog yawned 3 seconds later. A man yawned in a park. A nearby pigeon fluffed its feathers and gaped its beak, the bird equivalent of a yawn. It happened over and over. Not every time, but often enough that it couldn't be coincidence. We're not just connected to other humans. We're connected to everything that yawns, and almost everything does. Mammals, birds, reptiles, even fish. A Siamese fighting fish will yawn when its tank water gets too warm. It opens its mouth wide, flares its gills, and pulls in cooler water. Same reflex, different body. Yawning is ancient. It probably evolved over 400 million years ago, back when our ancestors were still fish, before lungs, before legs, before brains complex enough to feel anything we'd recognize as emotion. And it's stuck around because it works. Cool the brain, sync the group, survive. But now we use it for something else too. We use it to test connection. If you want to know if someone is paying attention to you, yawn. Not obviously, not like you're testing them, just yawn and wait. If they yawn back within a minute, they're unconsciously tracking you, they're mirroring you, they're connected even if they don't realize it. If they don't yawn, they're not tuned in. Maybe they're distracted, maybe they're stressed, maybe they're one of the small percentage of people who don't experience contagious yawning, or maybe they just don't care. Therapists use this, hostage negotiators use this. Anyone who needs to build rapport quickly learns to watch for mirroring behaviors. Yawning is one of the easiest to spot because it's automatic. You can fake a smile, you can fake interest, but you can't fake a yawn triggered by someone else's yawn. It either happens or it doesn't. And when it does, it means something. It means your brain recognized another brain and responded. Without language, without thought, just pure biological connection. That's what Carl Sagan understood, not about yawning specifically. He probably never thought much about yawning, but about connection, about the fact that we're not separate, that every reflex, every automatic response, every unconscious behavior ties us to something larger. When you yawn, you're not just cooling your brain. You're participating in a process that started 400 million years ago. You're synchronizing with people you've never met. You're proving that empathy isn't a choice or a skill. It's built into your nervous system. It fires whether you want it to or not. And that matters, because we live in a time when people think connection is optional, when they believe they can choose who to care about and who to ignore. But your brain doesn't work that way. Show it another person yawning, and it yawns. Show it another person in pain, and it fires the same neurons. You don't get to opt out. You're wired to feel. So the next time you yawn, don't just cover your mouth and move on. Stop for a second. Think about what just happened. Your brain overheated by 0.5 degree, your body opened a cooling vent, and if someone near you yawned too, your nervous system's just synchronized without either of you trying. You're not alone in the universe. You're tangled up in it, connected to every person who's ever yawned, every animal, every fish that gaped its mouth 400 million years ago. You're part of an unbroken chain, and all it took was a yawn.